I'm Joan Young, and I'm the president of Sunbelt Business Brokers. Just as a pitch, Sunbelt is the largest business brokerage firm and mergers and acquisitions company in the world, with 235 offices, I believe now, and in 9 countries. So we're based in San Jose, and I've been helping buyers and sellers throughout the Bay Area for over 15 years with Sunbelt. And prior to that, I owned FranNet of the Bay Area and helped buyers get into franchising. So hopefully that helps me with both hats today. But just in case, I invited Elyse Phillips with FranNet to join us. And just to let you know a little bit about FranNet, they're the largest franchise consulting company in North America, and FranNet reps over 100 national franchises. I believe that's about right?
That's right.
So Elyse is the business matchmaker of Silicon Valley, and she helps buyers find the right franchise to meet their budget, their goals, and their timeline. So Elyse coaches clients through the business search process and helps them really assess their skills and matching them with the right franchise, because that's really the key. And Elyse has successfully also done business brokerage and has owned her own business as well as a startup and a software company. So welcome, Elyse.
Thank you, Joan, for having me, and welcome to everyone on the webinar today. This is we're going to have some fun.
Yeah. We're going to have 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So you can enter your question in the chat box. If you'll notice, that's over to the left at the bottom, and you'll see it on the screen. We cover as many questions as we can, and if there's something that we don't get to, please feel free to call Elyse about franchising and call me about business ownership. So I don't think they really have to put their phones on mute, because I think I have everybody on mute.
Yep.
So why don't we get started? So what we're going to start with today, what we're going to cover, is advantages of business ownership, and then we're going to compare the 3 options: starting a business from scratch, buying an existing business, and buying a new franchise. And then we're going to talk about how to finance your purchase and how to create an asset to sell later. So many people don't realize that really should be your end game in building a business so that you have something of value down the road, and how to build your success team. Okay, let's get going. So there's many reasons that I've found over the years that people get into business. So take a look see if you can relate to any of those. But the 2 that just jump out at me that I'd say most people have said when I ask them what's your real reason, they say they want independence and they want control. Because as you know, working for the man and working at corporate, you really don't typically have that kind of freedom. So, and I think the layoffs has been important too, in Silicon Valley at least, because you just didn't have that security. So, I want to just make it very clear that business ownership is not right for everyone. I've met with hundreds and hundreds of people over the years, and I've probably discouraged more than encouraged a lot of them, and they just didn't seem to have what it takes. So hopefully today you're going to see whether you fit and whether business ownership is something for you. Definitely at first it's scary. You should be, because there's a lot you don't know. But there's so many advantages that I think we ought to look at. No one is going to take your business away. If you're running it, still paying your debt back on your business, you're going to be able to keep it, and you're not going to be downsized from it and have that insecurity that happens when working for someone else. It happened to me years and years ago. I was with Memorex Corporation, and I had been named Manager of the Year in February, and in June the job was eliminated, because some of you old-timers on the line might know that Burroughs bought Memorex out. And that was that. But it was the best thing that happened, because that's when I did co-found a franchise company. One thing that I love about business ownership, you really can call the shots. You can keep it as small, you can have home-based, or you can build multiple locations and even be a regional franchisor. So you're in charge of that. and then you can grow the business. I think this is one of the beauties of business ownership. You can grow it, then ease off, meaning hire somebody to replace you, so that now you're semi-absentee owner, so you have the flexibility down the road. So in business ownership, you don't have to retire. You can really kind of set your business up the way you want it and maybe work 10 hours a week. I'm just putting a new listing on in the next few days of a retail business that she works maybe 10 hours a week and has it running very well. So you have that flexibility. And the good news also is that the longer you own your own business, the safer it becomes. You've worked out all the bugs, you've worked out the systems, you have good employees, and that's what makes it more valuable down the road. By the way, if you start buy an existing business, franchise, or start something from scratch, you really want to make sure that you're not in charge of everything. You want to have management in place so that the business is going to be worth something, and that when you walk away, not everything that goes with the business is going away with it. So just keep that in mind. Okay. One thing that many people have asked me over the years when I was doing franchise consulting as well as people buying existing business, they always say, Joan, what's the hot business? What's the best business out there right now? And it really has nothing to do with what's hot out there. It's really what matches your profile and what's good for you. So let's look at how you really build your business profile. And the first thing is really knowing yourself. What are you good at doing? Is it working with people? Is it sales? Is it marketing? And make sure the business you get into is going to be able to highlight that. One of the things when you're looking at franchises, Elyse will hook you up with and match you with 2 or 3 good solid businesses, and you're going to be able to do due diligence and talk to people actually doing what you're considering doing. Now you need to look at yourself and see, are you like those that are successful, or do you relate more to the ones that are kind of struggling? So see your differences and see see where you fit as far as the business that you're looking at. And that's the first step, is looking at yourself. The second step is your financial requirements. Look at your financial situation and look and see how much your living expenses are, what kind of startup costs, working capital to keep the business going. And once you do that, you're going to be able to tell whether, gosh, I really need to buy an existing business that has cash flow, or you may say, gosh, I can get into a franchise for a lot less, and you have the living expenses and everything saved, or your spouse or partner may be making enough to give you that time to start it from scratch. Look and see what your goals are. Are you going to be content with $50,000, $60,000 a year, or do you absolutely need at least $150,000 to $200,000? Are you the primary bread earner or the secondary? And that's going to make a big difference. And then look down the road and see what you want to be doing in 3 to 5 years. That's going to determine whether you have multiple locations, whether you buy add-ons if you have an existing business, or maybe even want to start different platforms. But you need to really look ahead and see if you can picture yourself doing this for at least 3 to 5 years. A lot of people don't realize that. They get stuck and they can't move forward because they think, I have to have this for the rest of my life. Well, you really don't. Many people will buy a business or get into a franchise and they keep it 3 to 5 years, and then they sell it and they have built equity in their business so that they've made a very nice profit from where they started. Okay, what's step 3? Business attributes. So you need to look and see, are you somebody that really is not comfortable calling on clients and going out into the field, but you're okay inside. So find a business that's going to complement that part of your skills. Some people, employees absolutely freak out. They aren't good with them, where other people thrive on helping others and helping build their career within your company. So ask yourself, that's a big one, because some businesses, I know I sold a home health care business, or quite a few of those, and there's usually anywhere from 15 to 25 caregivers, and that's either going to be fun for you or a nightmare. So make sure you look at that. Are you going to be happy in a home-based business? That is an option. There are some that are home-based and do very well. Some of the e-commerce businesses are home-based. Many of you are going to prefer a dedicated facility. Name recognition or less important. There's some franchises that Elyse is going to talk to you about that you're going to recognize the name, and many others where you have even more opportunity because there's more space available, right?
Right.
Where some of the well-known ones, you might have to go down to Gilroy, and you live in San Mateo, so you have to look at that. And then look and see how quickly you need to get into business. If you buy an existing business and you happen to like one that's on the market now, that's great. It typically takes anywhere from 60 to 90 days to get the deal done if you get started. With a franchise, if it isn't site sensitive, you can get into it immediately. So let's look at is there a step 4? Okay. What about industries? Do you want to get into something that you've done before, or are you ready to change? Business to business and personal services are very hot. Many people like those, and some of them, very few employees, 2 or 3. Others of you have been in manufacturing, maybe wholesale distribution. Those are going to be more buying existing businesses or starting it on your own. Retail, there's always a lot of choices with that, and all of your choices, automotive and food. Okay. Now let's look at your options. So you do have choices. You can either start something from scratch, buy a franchise, or get into an existing business. And Elyse and I have both done startups, right, Elyse?
Yep, absolutely.
What were yours that you started?
So I've actually started a couple different businesses from the ground up. One was a brick and mortar business in the spa industry, so it was a day spa, and then I created a private label line of products that we used in our spa and also sold to other spas. So that was more of a what I would call sort of traditional type of business. And then I have also started software startups in addition to working for other venture-backed startups, have started a couple tech products on my own. So you're working with somebody with a lot of experience in startup as well as, and Elyse, we worked together at Sunbelt. She was a business broker as well and helped people get into that, so she's well versed in that. And then buying a franchise. I'd say, I don't know whether you agree with this, Elyse, but I would say if you're thinking of starting a business from scratch, you really have to be a true entrepreneur. You have to be ready for whatever comes your way. There's lots of, and we're going to go over the pros and cons. The kinds of people that buy a franchise typically have been corporate people, which I was and you were. Yep.
And then buying an existing business, those are probably people that want to have a little more control over what they're doing and want to be able to bring in their grandmother's cookie recipe. If they have something where a franchise, you'd have to get that approved by the big guys.
Right.
But let's look at these individually. Okay, startup. Total control. You get to call the shots, do whatever you want to with the business, bring in whomever you want. You get to make all the decisions. It's really your baby, right? I mean, you get to, and of course it comes with some negatives too, but you get to keep all the profits. There is no royalty going out to anybody. It does have the biggest upside if you're able to get the funding that you need, and you really get to follow your passion. Where a lot of people have called me and said, gosh, there's just nothing out there right now. I see gas stations, convenience stores, liquor stores, and that's not what my industry is. So you really have to look, take some time to really dig into it. And that's why
I think if you have the next, the idea for the next Facebook, you need to go start that from scratch, right? You're not going to be able to buy an existing business like that or get into a franchise. So, I think startup businesses are great if you have that very unique idea that really you can't get into that business by any other way than sort of you building it from the ground up.
Right. Good point. And then there's disadvantages to starting a business from scratch. You have to create all the systems. You typically don't just buy software off the shelf. It has to be customized to you. And typically you can't go to your competition and say, tell me how you did this. So you really have to rely a lot on yourself and, of course, your network and people that have done it also. Limited financing options. It's harder to raise funds. Elyse, you've done it, so maybe you can discuss that.
Right. So, if you start up a business on your own from scratch, you're really not able to borrow money from a bank. You're not able to get, for example, an SBA, a Small Business Administration loan, which is we'll talk about later in the context of if you buy an existing business, it certainly may, be fundable with an SBA loan. Or a franchise, again, financeable with an SBA loan. But if you're starting up your own business, you really need to finance it either with your own savings, friends and family money, or if you are in the tech space, with an angel or venture funding.
Okay. It does take time before startups make money. Many times it's 2-3 years. Have you found that too?
Or never.
Or never.
Right?
Oh,
so
failure rate.
So yeah, I was going to say, so the bottom two bullets here are, the highest failure rate, and when we hear about that, whatever that statistic is, 8 out of 10 small businesses fail in the first 2 years. That's really those startup businesses, right? Because you are starting something brand new that's not proven, and so it may be years before you make money, or you may not make money. And the kind of the last bullet here points to that. There may not be a need for your product, right? And I think we see it a lot in the Valley, and maybe many of you on the line have also worked for startups that, ended up really not, they created a great product, but really found that there was not necessarily a need for that product.
So you really need to validate that there is a market for that product.
Yep.
So that's startups. Let's look at buying an existing business, which is near and dear to my heart. I'd say probably one of the advantages that draws the majority of people in is it has cash flow. And you get to look at the past 3 years to see, it really has grown over the last 3 years, or what happened last year. So you really get to look at it. When you're getting financing, the SBA is very, by the way, they're aggressive again. For years they were very quiet, but now they're looking at working with buyers to help them get a loan. But one thing they're really going to look at is your background and how it fits with this business that you're considering. They really want you to have transferable skills, or even better, have experience in that industry. You're going to get to see exactly where your business is going to be. If it's location sensitive, you're going to get to see that it's right on Stevens Creek, if it's Stevens Creek, if it's a retail business, and know the kind of traffic that it has already developed. Employees in place, that is beautiful. You don't have to start it from scratch. Usually management will hopefully stick around, and we'll talk about the disadvantage and how you can make it into an advantage. Systems in place, owner will often finance some of it. If you get an SBA loan as a buyer, they often require that the seller will carry at least 10% of that purchase price. So now he's got skin in the game, so he's going to be around to answer your questions, to help you. You might even be able to get him to agree to consult with you for 12 months. There's also existing customers and referral business there. So these are the things, in licenses and permits, these are things that people like about an existing business, especially if you have to have cash flow from the get-go. Disadvantages, I typically haven't had this one because we're so picky about our listings, and they have to have cash flow, and they have to be able to prove it to us. But there are a lot of businesses out there that you have to really trust the seller, because is what they're showing you true? That's why we base a lot on the tax returns, not necessarily just the profit and loss statements. What is the goodwill? Has the business been doing well for the last 3 years? And if possible, get 5 years. But typically the Small Business Administration, they only ask for 3. So we figure if it's good enough for them, it's probably good enough for buyers. Always find out what the seller's reason is for selling. I love it when they're retiring, or really the number one reason that sellers sell has been burnout. I had a fellow that was 45, and he had been in this business since he was 20, and that's a long time to be in the same business. By the way, the national average is the typical business owner keeps their business for 7 years, and so he was way over. But if you're having fun, you don't need to sell. Employees, how do you know they're going to stay? One thing that I recommend doing, especially if it's one of your key employees being a manager, I make sure that the seller offers them a bonus. Part of the bonus is paid at closing, and the other is paid a year from then. So then you know, and you make it significant enough so that they want to stick around. So that's been very helpful. And another thing as a buyer you may want to do is ask the seller to
Carry back up. Nope.
That's not what I was going to say. Her employee defection.
Higher debt service.
Okay.
I think under higher debt service, because you are buying that existing cash flow, you're going to pay a higher purchase price for a business than, for example, if you start something from scratch or if you buy a new franchise. Because what you're paying for is that immediate cash flow. So you're going to have higher debt service than you would with like a startup scenario or buying a new franchise.
Absolutely. And this last one, I haven't encountered this, but I'm sure it's happened, is that the seller is supposed to stay on with you for 30 days and they don't. So there can be money put in escrow to ensure that, they get that piece after training if there's any doubt at all. These are, you can just take a quick look. These are some of the industries that we have sold probably in the last year or two.
So a pretty wide range of businesses available.
And go over this quickly with you is kind of how it looks. I've just picked a small number for a business, existing business. Let's say you've agreed on a $300,000 purchase price. If you're working with the SBA, you need to put down 20%, so that's $60,000. So now you're left with $240,000. This particular example has a seller carrying 20%. You typically will only need 5 to 10%, but if you get them to carry 20, now you only have to pay the SBA or whomever you chose. The remainder. So people are using their 401ks. I know, at least with franchising, they're borrowing without any penalty. So that's a good thing that Elyse can talk to you about. Small Business Administration, HELOC, those are all ways you can borrow. But typically with SBA, you'll only need, and even as little as 15% down. So that lets you know the size of companies you can be looking at. Finding an existing business, the best places to look, you can look on our webpage. We're a little light right now because we've just closed a bunch of transactions, but sunbeltbayarea.net, and it shows you how to get to it, businesses and listings. Probably the two biggest websites are BizBin and BizBuySell, and most people that have a listing out there, they're going to be on those two, but I gave you BizQuest and Merger Network also. So now I think it's time to look at the next slide.
So thank you, Joan. So far we've talked about two different ways to get into business for yourself. One is by starting a business from scratch, and the other is buying an existing business. And the third way that people get into business for themselves is by buying a new franchise. So what is a franchise? It really is a proven, time-tested model that works, right? And so I think when all of us think of franchises, probably McDonald's comes to mind. They were one of the big success stories, and so that's a big advantage of buying a franchise, is that you are buying a system that works, and a system that's already been proven. Gives you some very predictable future results. You are able to model what is the financial first year, second year, third year is going to look like, because you have the opportunity to talk to all sorts of existing franchise owners in that franchise. And part of the process of looking at a franchise is doing just that. You are able to contact all of the existing franchise owners as well as the past franchise owners of any franchise. Those are disclosed in what's called a franchise disclosure document. And if you look at a franchise, you are able to call all of those other owners and say, tell me about what your normal day looks like. Tell me about how much it really cost you to open your doors. When did you start making money? How much are you making now? So because you've got that model, because you've got those predictable future results, franchise purchases are very attractive to lenders. Joan mentioned the SBA earlier. At FranNet, we work with over 100 different franchise concepts, and almost all of them are already pre-approved for SBA loans.
That's a real plus.
So if you bring in 20 or 30% of your initial startup costs with your own cash, the SBA will finance the rest of it.
That's right. With franchising, you need around 30, right?
20 to 30%,
Okay.
Yep, depending. And the other advantage is that you have that very transparent due diligence process, because you can talk to all different kinds of franchise owners. And really what you want to do is you want to begin to hear patterns, right? If you talk to, say, 10 different franchise owners in a specific franchise, and you keep hearing, man, I would never do this one again, run, right? Do not walk, because there are plenty of other franchises or existing businesses that are successful. So just like people, there are good people and bad people, well, there are good franchises and bad franchises. So you really do want to do your research and your due diligence so that you understand what you're buying into. And then another advantage is oftentimes franchises have recognized brand names like McDonald's. But as Joan mentioned also, there are many franchises out there that are not household names because they're not brick and mortar. They're service businesses, or they are consulting businesses or manufacturing businesses that you may not drive by 100 signs a week for them, but they're excellent businesses, and they all have turnkey operating systems from day one that you can walk in the door and bring your investment and bring your talent and get things going right away. Some of the disadvantages of buying a new franchise is there are a lot of them. There are a seemingly endless number of concepts to choose from, and if you have gone on any of the franchising websites, you may have found that. And like I said, there are good franchises, but there are also a lot of bad ones out there. So really understanding and having a good selection process yourself will be essential for you making the right choice. You will pay a franchise fee in order to buy into a new franchise. You will get a protected territory, and with that franchise fee comes your initial training. You'll do some training both at the corporate headquarters as well as having folks from the franchisor come to your location and get your doors open. And then you'll also pay ongoing royalties, which is a percentage of the gross revenue that you will pay for the duration of the time that you own a franchise. So that franchise fee and that royalty model is specific to franchises, and it's a little different. You've got to be comfortable with that and knowing that you are getting value for what you're paying there.
Because it's really driving people to the business by that name and the reputation that you built.
It is. It's also shortening that time to cash. So like we said, with a startup, if you start a business from the ground up, you really don't know when you're going to make money. When you buy into a new franchise, you really do know when you're going to be able to make money, because you are going into that proven model and that really turnkey situation. So you can sort of plug and play. You also, for some folks, a disadvantage of a franchise is that they do have to follow the system. And if you buy a McDonald's, it is not okay for you to put an extra pickle on the burger. So you just have to be comfortable to say, you know, look, yeah, this is a system that I really like, I believe in, and it's one that I want to follow. And then there are some territory restrictions. As I mentioned, you do buy a protected territory, and you are, with most franchises, able to market within that territory. But if you want to expand, you would need to buy another territory. And for some folks who sort of want to don't want that that limitation, that's a disadvantage.
One advantage, too, I think, of working with FranNet is FranNet's already vetted those franchises. They've already checked them out, and they had to go through grueling requirements to be able to meet the FranNet criteria.
We did. So the 100 or so franchises that we work with meet two criteria. One is that they have a very high success rate, which sounds really obvious, but as I said, if you've been out on the web, you may find franchises that do not have great success rates. So number one, all of our franchises that we work with have high success rates, and number two, they all replace a six-figure income because that's really what particularly Bay Area buyers are looking for. So aren't franchises just burgers and fries, right? I get that that question all the time. Well, certainly there are some great burger and fry franchises out there, but fact of the matter is there are over 3,000 franchises that operate in the U.S. in more than 90 industries with about 1 million operating units. And only about 20% of the franchises that I work with are retail and food. The rest of them are in the categories that you see here on the right. So they're in manufacturing or education. They're in maintenance, healthcare, pet care, senior services, home repair, IT services. And franchises really follow demographics. So if you think about, you know, a growing demographic, dual income, single parent households, Gen X, Gen Y, millennials, what are those folks purchasing? Well, they're not cleaning their homes, right? So maintenance franchises are super successful, not glamorous, but can be highly profitable. Home maintenance and repairs, laundry, pest control, pet grooming, boarding, walking, pampering. It's amazing. In the 2008 to 2012 recession, one of the few industries that grew, not only did it stay flat, it grew, was the pet grooming, boarding, walking, pampering. We spend money on our pets. Health, wellness, and stress management. You've probably heard recently that Google has a big push towards wellness within their employees. A lot of companies and insurance companies are wanting to keep us healthy, reimburse for wellness and stress management. So all of these are great franchises that really thrive and follow that demographic trend. The aging population, another great demographic trend. 10,000 people a day turn 65 in the U.S., and they'll keep doing that for the next 20 years. So home modifications, mobility devices, impaired hearing, in-home care, assisted living placement. These are all examples of franchises that serve this demographic. Essential consumer services. We all get our hair cut, and believe me, I would love to get my cut and color online while I'm sitting on my sofa, and it is not going to happen, right? Some great hair care franchises. Auto repair here in California, we keep our cars longer because we don't have winter. There's a lot of demand for that ongoing auto maintenance. Quality education for our children. We all spend a lot of money to make sure that our kids have the right tutors, have the right coaching for their college applications, have the right SAT prep, property damage restoration, electronics repair, specialty clothing, healthy food options. And on the business side, there are a lot of franchises that serve business services, commercial signage, personnel and staffing, drug testing. There is actually a franchise for mobile drug testing as companies want to, are testing more and more of their employees. So how do you figure out which business is best for you? We talked about a lot of different categories and a lot of different ways, types of businesses to get into. Really what you want to do is understand what is it that you want from the business. Challenge, recognition, prestige, flexibility that Joan talked about, financial security. So really understanding what it is that you want out of a business, and then also understanding what it is you bring to the business? What are those transferable skills? We've all spent a lot of our careers in corporate America working for someone else. And a lot of my clients say, I don't sort of have that entrepreneurial DNA, whatever that is. And that's not really true, because in our careers, we have all developed transferable skills that will make us successful in a business. So get a handle on what yours are. Is it customer service, marketing, management, sales? Is it on the technology side, operations, finance? Really understand what those strengths are. And also make sure that you have on your success team 2 professional advisors. You will want a business or transactional attorney and an accountant. And I stress the transactional attorney because a lot of our clients know people who are either patent attorneys or they're family attorneys or
Divorce attorneys.
Divorce attorneys, exactly. And the fact of the matter is, if you don't work with an attorney who really understands what a business sale looks like, they are going to learn about that business sale on your dime, and you don't want that. And of course, an accountant to advise you how you want to hold the business, how you want to set up your books, and Joan and I can certainly help refer you to professionals like these. So what are the next steps? If you're interested in franchising, we have this very cool online franchise assessment. You can just text PFAEP to this number. It will ask you for your email. And it's sort of like an eHarmony profile, but it's really for your business acumen. It takes about 20 minutes online, and the output is a 10-page profile that says, here are your strengths, your management strengths, your communication style, the transferable skills that you bring to the table. And then the cool thing is, at the end, it says, and people who look like you have been successful in franchises like this. So it kind of does that first step of matching you with a business that might be a good fit for you.
And what I remember is when I was doing FranNet is people are so amazed how
what you
right on it is.
Yeah, well, and there's also a surprise or two, right?
Oh,
like,
yeah,
and when you read about yourself, you're like, oh, really? So, so yeah, it's a fun little sort of glimpse into your business brain.
And then if you prefer buying an existing business, look at our webpage, and then if one of the listings is interesting, call the broker's name that's on that. You can also look at CAB website, that's California Association of Business Brokers, and I think we talked about those other web pages. Sunbelt does not do buyer searches. So if you find something and you would like to be represented by us, we'd be more than glad to do that, but we don't do a search. We've found that just as a bit time consuming. So now it's your turn. We've got some questions here. If you haven't done it yet and you're thinking of something that you'd like answered, please put those down in the corner. One of the questions that we have, when the seller carries 20%, same interest rate applies to that portion? No, the SBA has a set interest rate, and it's really between you and the seller. On
how you structure that
it.
Part of the note.
Yeah, the SBA is typically for 10 years, and it's prime plus 2 to 2.5, depending on when you're checking. But I'd say sellers, we try to get it as close to that as possible, but it's definitely not 10 years. They like it 3 to 5 years, and of course, we like to get it as long as possible to help your cash flow. So, another question is, how many businesses that are in distress and needs to be turned around, where those businesses can be found? They're probably right on those web pages.
Yeah, I would say you'll see a couple things on those websites. You will see obviously a purchase price, right, which the asking price. You will also see something called either cash flow or SDE, seller's discretionary earnings, or whatever else it's called, adjusted net. Whatever that is basically a different way of saying here's how much the business is making. If you're looking for a distressed business, that will probably not give you a number. Rather, it will say call for information, right? So what that means is it's not making money. And so those websites are good places to find those distressed businesses. I would caution you, if you are going in and buying a distressed business, really understand what you bring to the table and be confident that you understand the dynamics of the business and the fact that you can that you can turn that business around.
The next, okay.
So we have another question regarding, how long does it take to buy a business? So if I want to buy, Joan, if somebody's looking to buy an existing business, how long does that typically take?
Typically 60 to 90 days if you find it immediately. And
Okay.
if you're taking time to look for it, it just depends.
Mm-hmm.
But if you found something, once we make an offer, go through due diligence, make sure the contract is agreeable to everybody, open escrow, do your due diligence, and then close. And if you get an SBA loan, that can take 60 days.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the minimum, it's probably between 60 and 90.
Yep. And for a franchise, from the time you sort of identify a franchise that you're interested in to the time that you do your due diligence, you sort of negotiate the territory, and you kind of close the deal, it's about the same. It's about 90 days. Sometimes it's longer. I have the process that I go through with clients where we start with that profile I shared with you, and then we kind of build out the business model. They typically, I recommend, 2 to 3 franchises for folks to look at, and then sometimes we get their feedback and tweak it, and so they may add more to the mix. So it could be, up to 6 months, just kind of depending.
Mm-hmm.
One question is, I have an accountant who's out of state. How important is it for me to have them located in California? I think it's important to have your attorney and your accountant located here just because they're familiar with sort of what's going on in California and in the Bay Area.
But to just look at profit and loss statements and
Right.
tax returns and things like that,
You think it's okay for an accountant standpoint?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say from an attorney standpoint, have
attorney,
somebody in California.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Is there a cost to take your online assessment? There is no cost. And what is that link again? Thank you so much for asking. It is right there. One other question is, can you help me get financing? Yes, so Joan and I both have really great partners that we work with on the financing side. And back to, there are good franchises and bad franchises. There are good financiers and bad financiers too. So we would be happy to refer you to some good folks who can help you.
Another question is there a general multiple of EBITDA or SDE for sales price? There is, and it's typically based on the industry that you're in. So if it's retail, that's going to be one number, but it's usually a range. So let's say for retail, it could be 2 times your seller's discretionary earnings plus inventory, or it could be up to 2.3 times. So it's a range, and what's going to determine whether it's the higher or lower is the value it is really to the buyer. And they're going to look at how long the seller's been in business, what the management team's like, what the numbers are like. Typically, the higher the seller's discretionary earnings or EBITDA, you get a higher multiple. If it's manufacturing, it could be 4 to 5 times EBITDA.
Mm-hmm.
So it really depends
by
on
industry.
Yeah, by
Yep.
industry.
Exactly. Great. Well, thank you all. I think our time is up here.
Yeah, it is.
Appreciate your involvement and your questions. And here's I think we've got our emails here. Please feel free to reach out to Joan or to me. And thanks so much. We look forward to working with you again soon.
And if we didn't get your question answered, feel free to call either one of us and we'll answer that for you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.